The series is over. The Rockets advance. And Westbrook and the Thunder will go home.
Russell, things got a little contentious between you and Patrick Beverley. Can you talk about, kind of what happened there?
Oh, yeah, he was talking about he was first team all defense, but I didn't know what the hell he was talking about because I had 42 at the time. I don't know what he was talking about, but I guess he wanted to be first team all defense or something. Maybe he was dreaming about it.
But now it shocked me because he said he looked up and said, "No one can guard me. I got 40 points." I'm like, that's nice. He took 34 shots to get it.
Shots fired. No love lost in this series. Things were getting testy after the Rockets eliminated the Thunder in 5 games. For some perspective on what we saw and what's to come, let's welcome in 3-time NBA champion, the 2008 Coach of the Year, Byron Scott is here. He's got a brand new book, Slam Dunk Success. Jordan Schultz along with us as well, our NBA analyst. All right, Coach, first off, do you have any issue with Russell Westbrook walking off the floor and not shaking hands with the Houston Rockets?
You know what, I thought, Maggie, that he would stay on the floor because of his good friend James Harden, to congratulate him and say, good luck in the next round. But I really don't have an issue with it, to be honest with you, because of the fact that he is such a competitor. He hates losing. Yeah. And for that particular moment, and he probably would even say today, well, maybe I should have stayed on the court. But at that time, in the heat of the battle, when all this is going on, the last thing you want to do is be on the court and congratulating everybody else. You want to get to the locker room and kind of sit there and kind of really go over everything that just went on and kind of reflect back. So I really don't have an issue with it because, number one, it is Russell, and I know how competitive this guy is.
Yeah, I would go back to the Pistons. This reminded me of that when Isaiah walked off the floor. Bad boys era against MJ. When they finally got over the hump, the Bulls didn't beat the Pistons. Not quite the same, but I get it. It bothered me at the time, but when you step back and look at it, it's like, why would you stay on the floor and everybody's celebrating? You're in an away arena. It's a tough deal.
Yeah, the only thing that bothered me about that with the Pistons when they did it, the game wasn't over.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Jordan, they walked right past the Chicago Bulls, and the game wasn't done.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of bothered me as an athlete. But last night, that didn't bother me whatsoever because, like you said, in the heat of the moment, that guy is one of the most competitive guys in this league. And if you remember, LeBron James did the same thing when the Celtics beat them. So, I mean, some of these guys, they just don't want to congratulate you at that particular time.
We read into a lot of what LeBron did when he walked off the court, took off the Cavaliers jersey. It was like very symbolic. We don't believe that Russell Westbrook is going anywhere because he signed at least another year extension. But down the road, is there anything that Westbrook needs to do this offseason to improve his game, or do the Thunder just need a better supporting cast around him?
I think they need a better supporting cast around him. I think he did everything possible to get this team to where they were able to get to in the playoffs, a 6th seed against one of the better teams in the Western Conference. And I thought this series would go about 5 games, and it did. I thought they would win one at home, and they probably gave away one of those at home as well, so it could have been a little bit more. But I think the supporting cast around him has to get better. I don't think there's a whole lot more Russell can do. I mean, the year that he had this year is historical. And I don't know if he's going to be able to match this next year, but if he tries, he's going to need some help to get them over the hump.
But just following up on the regular season, does it take a little bit of the shine off of what Russell was able to do, considering they only won 1 game in the postseason?
I don't think so. I think if you look at the body of work for the whole year and what he was able to accomplish, it's not overshadowed by not being able to win a first-round match or only win 1 game in a first-round match. I think what the regular season did for him is put him on a stage where he is one of the best players that's ever played this game, and he had a remarkable season, and you can't take that away from him.
I would almost go the other way. His team, he doesn't have a lot of help. I mean, realistically, they thought Oladipo was going to be a real starter. I don't think he's a starting guard on a playoff team. Adams is good, but they need another big. They love Cantor, at least I thought they did. They don't play him. They bring in McDermott, spread the floor in the playoffs. They don't play him. Right. If you look at the different benches and the depth, Houston has so much more. So for Westbrook to have the year he had with the lack of help, to me, is almost more impressive than anything else.
Oh, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Right, we saw that also that the Clippers lost to the Jazz, so now they're facing elimination here. Chris Paul clearly frustrated. We can see it all over his face. This is a player that you coach in New Orleans. If they eventually lose to Utah in this matchup, Coach, is Chris Paul better off looking elsewhere from the Clippers, moving on if he wants to win a title?
Well, I mean, if they lose this series, there's a lot of question marks with the Los Angeles Clippers. You look at Chris Paul, you look at Blake Griffin as well, being a free agent as well. You even look at Doc Rivers as the GM, as the coach of that team. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens this summer with those guys. Chris, I know, loves Los Angeles. You know, he loves the Clippers. He's a very loyal person, very loyal guy. He wants this organization to do well because they've never had a winning type of culture in this organization. Sure. Now they have that, but they just can't seem to get over the hump of getting past that second round. Even last year when they had an opportunity, or it might have been 2 years ago, they were up 3-1, against Houston, and they blew that and lost in the second round. So it's going to be very interesting. There's a lot of questions about the Clippers going into this offseason if they lose this series.
Yeah, I struggle with the Clippers because you look at the talent, it's pretty incredible. Yes. They bring in Crawford off the bench, who's an incredible scorer. They have Blake, they have Chris Paul. Redick has become a viable player. Mm-hmm. They have DeAndre, but there's not a cohesion there, and there never really has been. They've won games, but like you said, Byron, they haven't been able to sustain the playoff success. I wonder with Chris Paul, if you look at his numbers, averaging like 25 and 10 in this series, basically, what else can he do?
Right.
I mean, he's setting the table for everybody else. He just hasn't gotten the type of help. And obviously, they've had injuries. Last year, CP was out. Now it's Blake. They've had a lot of problems with injuries, but I'm not sure how much it would have mattered.
Sorry to jump over you, but, I think that players nowadays, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's always been this way, but they are very focused on their legacies, which I completely understand, especially someone like Chris Paul.
Absolutely.
And I wonder at this stage in his career, does he start thinking to himself, I'm going to be judged on whether or not I can win a title. I mean, I think Kevin Durant started to feel a little bit of that. We know LeBron James started to feel that in Cleveland. That's one of the reasons why he said he left. Remember, he said his famous quote, I don't want to be 30 with bad knees and no rings. Do you think that Chris Paul would have that in his mind? You know him so well that he thinks that perhaps, his legacy would take a hit if he doesn't win a ring.
I think that's exactly what he's thinking about. I know CP wants to win a championship. He's accomplished everything that you can accomplish as a basketball player in this game. From an individual standpoint, he's got all the accolades that you can get. So what he's thinking about, and the only thing he's thinking about, is putting a ring on his finger, or at least getting into a Western Conference Finals or NBA Finals. I think that right there would help him as much. So I know he's thinking along those lines. That's why I said it's going to be very interesting to see what this team does this offseason. And I agree with you, Jordan. The cohesiveness of the Clippers isn't there.
No.
It really isn't. And they're missing that one big piece that could probably solidify them to be one of the better teams is a three-man that can flat out score. That's been
Gordon
the problem.
Hayward.
Yeah, exactly.
You see that.
Flat out score. So if they can get that piece, and then they can kind of solidify some of these other pieces, which is really guys trusting each other and believing in each other, I think this team could be one of the better teams in the Western Conference.
I think a frustrated Clipper fan would say, another piece? I mean, how many more pieces do we need? We have, all-stars all over the roster. Moving on, though, we saw this terrible news about Steve Kerr, and I'm sure you guys know each other well, obviously, and played against each other, but he's dealing with this illness. It sounds just horrible. Back pain, nausea, headaches, everything. If he's out for an extended period of time, and this is not a disrespect to Mike Brown in any way, shape, or form, but can the Warriors win a title without their guy on the bench for them in the playoffs?
Maggie, I think they can, to be honest with you. I think the thing that serves them well is that they've been through this already before. They went through this last year with Steve missing a significant amount of time.
Not the playoffs, though.
That's true, but they've been through it, and then Luke stepped in and did a terrific job. Mike Brown's going to step in and do a terrific job. So it's not a voice that they're not familiar with. But at the end of the day, you want your leader there. And they're going to miss him if it's the finals. They're going to miss that calming voice that he has when he's sitting there on the sideline, when he's in the huddle. They're going to miss that about him. But I think this team is driven enough with the addition of Kevin Durant, who wants to win a championship so bad. And then you got the Splash Brothers, who were disappointed in last year. Draymond Green, we know he's their emotional leader anyway. So they got enough pieces there that I think can overcome the absence of Coach Kerr.
Yeah, just to jump in super quick, that's what I was saying the other day. It's not just the X's and O's with Steve Kerr. It's that calming presence,
Absolutely.
Right? The way that he does things so much differently than so many other coaches, putting the ball in Clay's hands sometimes, allowing Draymond to facilitate, and then being that calming voice. Can you speak to what that does for a team in the playoffs, Byron?
Well, anytime you see your leader never panicking, your troops never panic. And that's the thing about Steve Kerr. He's been through this so many times. He's won championships as a player. He was in San Antonio with Pop when they won championships. So he understands that calming force has a big influence on the players around him. And that's the thing that he brings to the table. And like you said, it's not always about the X's and O's. When he sits there in that huddle, with his pen and the pad, and he's writing down plays and he's talking to the guys, they see that confidence level in him as well. And they see that he has a no panic frame of mind going on, so they're not going to panic. So I think that common influence that he has, is big time when you have a coach like that.
I'm always surprised there's not more broken clipboards in a lot of those huddles, especially after.
They do them in the locker room.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure there's a supply closet somewhere and they're just stacked up. All right, let's talk a little bit about the book and some of the things you talk about in Slam Dunk Success. And one story that really stood out to me was, it's an anecdote you tell about you walking into the Lakers facility as a rookie, and you see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the first thing he says to you is, "Hey, Rook, give me some water."
That's right.
Okay, and you thought about it. Okay, this hurt your pride a little bit. You're like, I'm in the NBA now. I'm a first-round pick.
Right.
And I'm going to be a water boy now. But you said, when I looked and said it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I thought, just go get the water.
Go get the damn water.
Yes,
that's what
you said. Go get the damn water. Direct quote from you. Now seeing you had Kobe Bryant in his last year in LA. Did D'Angelo Russell get the damn water? I mean, do rookies today act the same way that you did that day when you walked in and saw Kareem?
No, they don't. They don't act the same way. But, you know, the rookies that we had in Los Angeles, we had enough veterans to say, okay, you got to bring the donuts, you know, the Krispy Kreme donuts this week, and next week you got to do it. So they still have fun with it. But they don't take it as serious as we did back in the day, because that was more of a pleasure and a privilege to have Kareem tell you to go. Really, I thought about, he spoke to me.
Right.
You know, that was kind of my first thought was that he spoke to me. So let me go get this water, and I gave him the water, and I said, here you go, Kareem, you know, and I was about as happy as can be. But as a rookie, you expect those guys to test you. You expect those guys to send you through those rookie things, because you got to think about it. You know, 2 or 3 years from now, you're going to be doing the same thing to a rookie as well.
Yeah, and it was the way you correlate in the book is great, because it's like, you know, don't forget when you're on top where you came from.
That's right.
And don't forget to treat people with that same kind of, you know, love and respect.
That's
Couple
respect.
sharp
That's right.
elbows.
You're not always going to be Baby B.
That's right.
Baby.
You got that. You're right.
Another thing in the book that I thought was particularly interesting, this is on page 2, so you got it right up here on the front. This is what you said. Okay. You said, I felt deceived. This is after you were fired by the Lakers. I felt Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak had used me to get through those final 2 years of Kobe Bryant's career and save their own butts by making me the scapegoat. It seemed as if that had been their plan all along. I may bleed purple and gold, but after that meeting, the blood was all over management's hands. Drop the mic, Byron Scott. I mean, was there in any way a little bit of closure then for you when the Lakers moved on from Kupchak and from Jim Buss?
Not really. I mean, the one thing about me, I mean, that was just a true statement on my part, because I really truly believe that what they told me, you know, this was going to take 2 or 3 years, and are you okay with that? And I said, I'm absolutely okay with that. Are you guys okay with that? Because this is a rebuilding. So obviously I felt betrayed after 2 years and Kobe's gone. I felt like, okay, so you used me basically because you wanted me to kind of control Kobe, because you knew he had respect for me, that he wouldn't go crazy. Right. And so I felt deceived, you know, so I said those words because I thought they were honest. But to see those 2 guys lose their job, that didn't do any good for me. You know, I don't want to see people get fired. You know, because I know everybody's trying to live and live their own livelihood. So that was the last thing that I want to happen. And when it happened, I felt bad. You know, I felt bad for those guys. But at the time when I got let go, that was exactly the way I felt. And I thought I would put it on paper and let everybody know.
So now looking back on that season, does your mind go to Kobe's 60, the final game of the season? Does it go to D'Angelo and Swaggy P and the issue they had? Where do your thoughts go in that final year?
I think, Maggie, for me, it goes everywhere. Yeah. You know, and I think that's the great thing about sports, that it takes you through these roller coaster, you know, emotional stages that you have to deal with. And all those things, I wouldn't take any of them back, you know, because all those things make you who you are. Dealing with the D'Angelo and Swaggy P, you know, saga. And then obviously Kobe's last game, that's going to always be a fond memory for me, because of the fact that I played with this young man when he was a rookie. And his last game of his career, I'm his coach. And he goes out in a blaze of glory. And when it started off, I was like, ooh, you know, he was like 0 for 6, 0 for 7. I was like, KB, I just don't want him to go out this way. And then he got hot, and then boom, he gets 60 points. We win the game. You couldn't, you know, Charlie and I wrote this book. You couldn't write a better book, you know, with the way that Kobe ended his career. So I was extremely happy about that, and I have very fond memories of that.
Yeah, we all now can say Mamba out
Yeah,
anytime we want to go out on a high note. Here, since you know the Buss family so well, obviously there's a lot of change now.
Yeah,
Magic Johnson taking over. Just if you can pull back the curtain for the rest of us, who do you think is in charge here? Is it Magic? Is it Jeanie? How are they going to work together?
I think it's really both of them, and I think they're going to collaborate on everything and every decision that's being made within the organization. You know, Jeanie knows Magic extremely well, and I think she is just in heaven that he's come on board. And Magic is a salesman. We know that. He was an unbelievable basketball player, unbelievable businessman. And if you give him a room, he will have everybody's attention in that room. Yeah. You know, when he speaks, he's like E.F. Hutton back in the day. You know, so
Good reference.
I know that he's going to be able to go in and sit in some living rooms of some of these free agents that they're going to be trying to target. And if they give him an hour, he will sell them on coming to Los Angeles because he is that good. And being that he played in L.A. and all the championships that he won and his personality, I truly believe that him and Jeannie will get this team back on the right in the right direction, and I think it'll be a lot sooner than later.
You put your hat in the ring for assistant coach or anything? You want to come back to the Lakers, or are you done coaching?
You know what? I think I'm done with the coaching. I see Irvin almost every other day at Equinox because he works out there as well.
He rides there. I know he does.
And he gets there before I get there. He gets there at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we're always kind of passing each other on the way out. But no, that's not something that I aspire to do right now. I'm having so much fun with ESPN. I'm having so much fun with Charlie Norris and our book tour. And I got these 3 beautiful grandkids at home that I enjoy seeing on a day-to-day basis.
That's great. The book, Slam Dunk Success. One last thing before we let you go. Last thing. For the first time in 46 years, no coaches were fired mid-season. 46 years. Any theories as to why?
No, I just think everybody is trying to give that coach time. Yeah. You know, and the one thing about the NBA is that everybody want to win like this.
Doesn't happen.
And the process doesn't happen that fast. You got to have a little faith in that person that you hired, and you got to give them some time. And it's not a 1 or 2 year antidote. It normally takes 3, 4, 5 years to get a franchise back to prominence. And it's the same with the Los Angeles Lakers. It's going to take some time. And I think Luke Walton, who I love Luke. I know his family extremely well. Luke played with me in Cleveland. Terrific person, terrific coach, and I think he's going to do a terrific job in L.A.
Fantastic. Congrats again. Slam Dunk Success. Brian. Great book because we get your perspective. We get Charles Norris's perspective. He's a water mogul, a magnet guy's a billionaire. So you guys are both coming from some
And Irvin right at forward.
And Magic right the forward. Right? And remember, we're having the
book signing
tonight. Yeah, the Equinox on 160th. And
shout out to Equinox, Columbus Circle, 59th Street. I'll be there. Thank you, Byron Scott. Really appreciate it. 3-time NBA champion and coach of the year. All right.
Thank you.
Well, the season has come to a close for OKC, which gave us a chance to properly say goodbye, or rather, good night. Watch this.
Good night, Thunder. Good night, Russ. Good night, fashion, and all that fuss. Good night, records. Good night, wins. Good night, free throws. Oh wait, you never went in. Good night, man bun. Good night, stash. Good night, talking all that trash. Good night, Victor, and good night, Taj. Good night, KD, though now you're just a mirage. Good night, Thunder. Good night, blunders. Good night, OKC. Now your summer is free.
Of course, the NFL draft begins on Thursday. 3 quarterbacks are projected to be picked in the first round, but we know anything can change. So let's welcome in Steve Calhoun. He's a quarterback guru. He's the founder and owner of Armed and Dangerous Football Camp. Coach Calhoun, great to have you back on the show. Okay, last year, nobody was talking about Dak Prescott, and nobody was talking about Cody Kessler. You were talking about those 2 gentlemen, and they went on to have great rookie seasons, especially Dak, who became the Rookie of the Year. So look at this draft class. Who are you projecting to have and find that same magic that Dak and Cody Kessler did?
Wow, this is a really strong class, you know, for a couple of guys that will fit into that box. The first name that comes off the top of my head is Nate Peterman from out of University of Pittsburgh. He he played in a pro-style offense, and just the production he had. He was the top quarterback in passing efficiency in the ACC, and of course the big win over Clemson and Deshaun Watson. I mean, he really showed that he can play at this next level.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And a guy who's a little bit under the radar. Is there anyone else who you think is not getting the love that they deserve but could walk into a starting role besides Peterman, or is he about it?
No, I think Davis Webb from Cal. He has a high ceiling. He has a really strong arm. He also, has the size. And, I mean, he's played a lot of football, and he's been through some adversity. That's one of the things I'm looking for in quarterbacks who's been through some adversity and who's able to command men in the huddle, and that's something I think he's able to do at the next level.
Okay, so let's talk about a player who hasn't been through a lot of adversity, and that's simply because they didn't have a lot of starts, and that's Mitchell Trubisky from North Carolina. 13 starts for him. Is that a good enough sample size, in your opinion, for a team to take him in the first round?
Oh, that would be tough for me. Me being a GM, I would need to see a lot more. But I mean, he definitely has all the characteristics of being a great quarterback. And I can see why, somebody of the NFL would take him in the first round.
For the first round projected quarterbacks, Trubisky we just talked about, also Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, who do you think will have the most immediate success?
Deshaun Watson. I think it's pretty clear and cut. I mean, what he was able to do in college, a 32-3 record, 2 appearances in the national championship game. And then winning one and playing against Alabama, both games, and the way he was able to play at a very high level against that team, of Alabama, I think he has the clear upside to step right in and have a lot of success.
His critics will say too many turnovers. As someone who works with a lot of these young men, what would be your response to that?
I think there's a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, every quarterback's going to go through turnovers. I mean, you look at some of the, from Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers to Drew Brees, they've all, turned the ball over at some point in time, but it wasn't consistent. I mean, but you look at Deshaun's production, and it's just hard to say, he won't be one of the top quarterbacks, in this draft, and I had the opportunity to train him way back when he was just a young sophomore at Gainesville High School. So I was doing a camp out there and really got a chance to know him then, and also, seeing him at the Manning camp, last summer, and we were able just to kind of talk and catch up and see where his mindset is. So I think he's a clear-cut choice to be the number 1 guy.
Okay, we'll see if that indeed happens on Thursday. Which quarterback do you think is going to have the steepest learning curve once they get into the pros?
I think Patrick Mahomes, just with the offense that he ran and the terminology, being able to, to be able to talk, spit out the plays. The terminology in the NFL. But he's done a great job. I talked to somebody who he was working with, Mike Shepard, down at Exos, and I know he has worked really hard with Patrick on that. But I think just the system and being able to go through all the progressions, the full field read that he's going to have to do at the NFL, I think he's going to have the biggest learning curve.
Coach Calhoun, so when you have a player who's coming from the air raid or the spread offense, what's the first thing you do when you get a hold of them to try to get them ready for the pro style?
I think you want to make sure he's comfortable dropping under center and being able to read defenses as he's dropping, because it's so different in being in the shotgun the whole time, kind of catching the ball where your eyes are down. You got to catch the ball first, and then you have to start to go through your progression. But so you really have to learn how to take a great pre-snap read, but being able to drop from under center and being able to use the terminology of the play calling. I mean, that's one of the things that I've seen that a lot of quarterbacks struggle with going to that next level.
Yeah, we'll have to see, actually, if any teams on the pro level start adjusting to some of these college quarterbacks, although I don't think that's happening in 2017. Steve Calhoun, of course, he's the founder. He's the owner, Armed and Dangerous Football Camps. You were right about Dak Prescott. You were right about Cody Kessler. Started a bunch of games last year. Coach, we appreciate your insight and perspective. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Making an NFL draft pick is easy, right? Well, it's harder than you might think. Back in the day, everybody was in the same room, and teams just told the commissioner their pick. Now, the GMs are hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away in team war rooms. So how does the pick get in? Team execs call the pick into team reps live at the draft. Then, the reps write it down on a card. Then the card is given to a runner who takes it up at the podium, where the pick is made, all in less than 10 minutes. There's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of screw-ups. The biggest draft blunder came in 1982. The Bucks drafted the wrong guy at 17 after their representative at the draft heard the name wrong over the phone. They tried to change the pick, but it was too late. And many teams have taken too long to make their selection, missing their pick entirely. In 2003, the Vikings accidentally passed twice after a trade went sour. The Jags and the Panthers both ended up picking before Minnesota. So good luck to all the teams at the draft this year. Don't screw up.
Okay, for all of you guys watching on Facebook Live and you're looking for the 7-Line Army documentary, I promise you the trailer is coming. We went a little long with Byron Scott. It is coming to you. I would not lie to you, but we need to take care of some NFL draft stuff first, so stay with us. Albert Breer of the MMQB.com is here. And Albert, actually, before we get to the draft, Marshawn Lynch, looks like this is going to happen. He's going to the Oakland Raiders. We're hearing that basically they swapped draft picks. Is that a too low a price? Could the Seahawks have gotten more?
The bottom line is Marshawn had plenty of leverage here. He absolutely could tell the Seahawks, I'm only going here. The reason why? There was no one that was going to pay what was on his existing contract. So if they tried to trade him, you'd be looking at that number if you're another team, and he can just walk away and say, I'm not playing for you. So he told the Seahawks, I'm playing for Oakland. I'm playing for Oakland only. The Seahawks have a relationship with the Raiders because John Schneider and Reggie McKenzie worked together for all of those years. And the truth is, I mean, as big a name as he is, he's a running back in his 30s. And in a year when there's such a strong, deep class of running backs in the draft, I mean, we see how hard it was for Adrian Peterson to get a job. Lynch is up against the same thing. So this is a good story that took a while to get hammered out. You know, the Raiders last week basically told Marshawn's camp, you know, we're willing to walk away from this. If you want to take this right up to the draft, we're willing to draft somebody and wash our hands of this. And I think ultimately, you know, the draft being on Thursday created the deadline that they needed.
Okay, so I think I may know the answer to this now, but do you feel like Marshawn, his addition to the Raiders, will make Oakland the Super Bowl favorite in the AFC? I mean, it is beast mode.
Let me give you some names, okay?
Yeah.
I'll give you some names. Brandon Cooks, Dwayne Allen, Stephon Gilmore, Coney Ely. Those are all pretty good players who are being added to the Super Bowl champions, who, by the way, still have the greatest quarterback of all time on the roster. And so does it make this Raiders a stronger contender? Yeah. I mean, I think that bringing in a running back like that, adding to the stable that they already have, making up for the loss of Latavius Murray, all that helps. The Raiders still need to get better on defense. They need to hit on their draft picks. They need to get a linebacker, maybe somebody like Florida's Jared Davis. They need to improve at corner. So, you know, I think this helps. I don't think running back was a huge weakness for them. It wasn't a gigantic weakness for them. And it's not like if they'd walked away from this, they wouldn't have been able to get help on Thursday or Friday during the draft. And so it's a nice move for the Raiders. It makes them better. Is it a game changer? No. And I certainly don't think it puts them past New England.
Okay, let's talk about the draft on Thursday. We want some surprises that we're going to see. And let's start with the quarterbacks because, of course, it's all about the quarterback. So what do you foresee being in store on Thursday?
Well, the consensus, and I don't think I'm breaking any new ground here, is that the first three quarterbacks off the board in some order are going to be Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Okay, and that leaves the question, who's the fourth quarterback, and whether or not the fourth quarterback will go in the first round. And I don't think it's Deshaun Kaiser. I think it's very possibly Davis Webb. I think Davis Webb could go in the bottom of the first round to a team that already has an established older starter, Pittsburgh, Giants, Chiefs. Because Davis Webb has tools. And some teams have looked at his tape at Cal and said, we actually like some of the things he does better than we liked Jared Goff last year. Now, the question becomes whether or not you can sit him. And there are teams at the bottom of the first round that are going to look at it and say, we've got a starter in place. We like this kid. We like his makeup. We like his intangibles. We like his talent. He's very raw. He needs time. He has to sit. And we've got an established starter here, so we can afford to sit him. And so I certainly think that Davis Webb is a player who we could be talking about 25, 27, 29, somewhere there in the bottom of the first round where there's a team with an established quarterback that says, we like this guy enough where we think in 2 or 3 years, maybe he's better than some of the guys who are going higher than him.
All right, we talked a lot about running backs with the Marshawn Lynch conversation, but who could surprise us in terms of ball carriers?
I'm
Your hands are up.
I'm the first person. I'm the first person to say I did not believe 3 weeks ago that Christian McCaffrey was a top 10 pick. I think
What changed in 3 weeks?
I think right now there's a scenario where Christian McCaffrey could go in front of Leonard Fournette and be the first running back taken.
Wow.
And here's the scenario, okay? Jacksonville could take Deshaun Watson. I've heard that consistently over the last 48 hours. Now, there are some teams out there that think that the Jaguars are doing this to scare Blake Bortles and that they're really going to stay with the chalk and take Leonard Fournette. But if the Jags do take Deshaun Watson, now you start to see where Fournette could go. And there's some buzz out there that Carolina, if they had the choice of the both of them, may actually go with McCaffrey, and that other teams know that, and a team may actually try to get up over Carolina to go and get McCaffrey. Now, I don't think Fournette's going to fall that far. Like, I think Cincinnati be a possibility for him in this scenario at 9. But there is a scenario out there, and they're much different players, you know? So there is a scenario out there where a team with a running back need, with all the running backs on the board, is going to look at it and say, we like all the different things that Christian McCaffrey can bring to the table, and we believe that because he's this multidimensional guy, he's best for us. We're going to take him over Leonard Fournette, and that team could be the Carolina Panthers.
All right, very interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Finally, we just keep hearing how much depth there is, a lot of defensive positions in this draft. So looking at linebacker, is there something that could surprise us?
One of the best stories in the draft, I think without question, is Hassan Reddick. I mean, it's a name that a lot of us hadn't heard 3 or 4 months ago. A guy who was a walk-on. He was a defensive back and a running back in high school, winds up being an edge rusher in college. Now it looks like he's going to be an inside linebacker in the pros. There's a potential there that he could be a top 10 pick.
Wow.
And I think this is a guy who I think a lot of NFL people would have told you a few months ago, 3rd or 4th round pick. I think he could be a top 10 pick. I think there's a good possibility he is the first linebacker off the board. Here's what's helping him. Reuben Foster, I think, from a talent standpoint, is without question the best linebacker in this year's draft. The failed combine test adds to a pretty lengthy file on him, okay? He's got injury issues. There were issues with drugs at Alabama, and teams know about that. Now, there hasn't been a lot of that hasn't come out publicly, but there are teams that had some concern, had that information, and they would look at that information and say to themselves, well, you know, it's just marijuana, not a big deal at all, right? And there are lots of kids like that. But then the kid goes and fails the combine test, and then that question becomes, okay, is he going to be able to stay clean now? Because now he's going to be in the drug program. And so I don't think Reuben Foster falls too far, but I think because of all of that, because there's a thick file on Reuben Foster now, you're looking at it, and some teams are going to say, you know what, the kid from Temple is so clean.
Yeah.
We'll just go ahead and take him over Foster.
Yeah, of course, he had the failed test at the combine. He also was sent home from the combine because he got into an argument with a medical worker, hospital worker in Indianapolis. Switching gears now, this is a story that's picking up a lot of steam. This is Garyon Conley, of course, one of the very talented cornerbacks from Ohio State. He's being accused of sexual assault. No charges have been brought against him. His lawyers are vehemently denying that anything went down in a hotel room in Cleveland earlier this month. But considering how close this is to the draft, Albert, is he going to get drafted on Thursday?
Well, let's explain what's happened over the last 24 hours. Now, Garyon Conley has been in touch with coaches, with general managers. He's been telling his side of the story. Teams have talked to witnesses, security directors, obviously, for all of the teams who are getting involved here. And the teams that don't have a huge need at corner or weren't wild about him as a player to begin with are just wiping him off the list or saying, we're not even going to mess with that. What's happening now is the teams that do like him are calling around and trying to figure out where is it okay that I take him, you know. And I think the likelihood right now is that this thing is that one way or the other, what, you know, charges, no charges, we're not going to have closure on that by 8 o'clock tomorrow night. I don't think there's much of a chance of that. And given that, I don't think he goes in the first round. I don't think he goes in the second round. I think when you get to the 3rd round, I think that's when he starts to create some discussion in these rooms. Do we go ahead and do it? Do we believe his story? Do we have good information on him from our security director? It's obviously a mess right now. And, you know, the big thing I think, another thing that hurts him, and look, you don't want to, I mean, it's hard to take something as serious as these charges are. You don't want to kind of juxtapose it against, you know, an NFL draft class or the strength of his position. But that's real here, too. And you can look at the example of Sidney Jones, who was a surefire first rounder before he tore his Achilles. Sidney Jones is going to drop now, because there's so much quality and depth at that position this year. So lots of teams look at Sidney Jones and say, we like him, and we think he could be a really good player in a year or two. But we're going to just take the guy that we know can help us now because our grades are close. And because of the depth this year, because there are so many good players, because some teams look at it and say, I had one team tell me they had draftable grades on 35 corners, that there could be starters into the 4th and 5th round. And that's going to hurt Connolly too, the same way it's hurting Jones, where there are going to be grades that are close on some of these kids, and teams are going to look at it and say, I just don't want to deal with that. Like maybe he's innocent, maybe our information's good on him, I just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it's a story we're definitely going to continue to follow, of course. It'll be you and me tomorrow night. Yeah. Andy Staples, the guys from Pro Football Focus, we're doing our NFL Draft Live show. It starts at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. We're taking you all the way through the first round. A lot of Conley discussion, I'm sure, will happen on that set. Albert Breer from the MMQB, really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Maggie.
All right, 7-Line Army, get ready, because while things don't look that great for the New York Mets right now, the list of injuries is daunting, and the division rival Nationals are the hottest team in baseball. But for one group of fans, win or lose, they are standing by their team. Loyal to the last out. It's SI Films' deepest dive yet. Sports Illustrated spent a year inside the 7-Line Army. That's the Mets' diehard fan club. The film airs this Sunday at 10 p.m. on MLB Network. Here's a look.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, so let's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame, for it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
I can't wait for everyone to get to see that film. I was lucky enough to watch an early screening of this doc, and I can tell you as a Mets fan, I couldn't have loved it anymore. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by the guys who literally created it, the founder of the 7-Line, Darren Meenan, executive producer of Sports Illustrated, Josh Shinsky. Fellas, how excited are you to see that for the first time?
I'm so pumped. I mean, the trailer came out awesome. I can't wait to see the doc actually on Sunday night. I think a lot of Mets fans out there are excited as well. We have fans, Mets fans are global, and I think people are really excited about this.
Yeah. Josh, what are you?
I'm just glad my sister wrote the song.
Yeah.
That's all it is. I'm just glad that she was kind enough to donate her time for that. No, this has been an exciting process. It's been a long process. It started back in 2015, so we're just happy to get to the end of the line here.
Yeah, and I die Met fans, all three of us. We live and die with this team, and I think over the years it's been a lot of downs, not so many ups, but the 7-Line has really made it a lot easier for all of us as a fan, as a family almost. How'd you create it? What made you do it?
I don't know, it's crazy, man. I feel like we talk about it all the time. I think the group is more about the community more than the wins and losses. Obviously, we want the team to win, but coming together to cheer on the team is more. It makes the group feel like more of a family than just fans coming together to watch a sport, you know what I mean? So we always try to organize things as far as like tailgate parties, meetups at bars, things like that. And it's not like we only see each other during the season. People got married because of the group. There's a baby on its way. Tara and Richie, shout out to them. People have come together for their love of baseball, but also their similar interest in just being a fan of the team is really what bonds us all together. So coming up with it it kind of just happened organically. I was making t-shirts in my parents' basement back in 2009, and then it slowly spawned into something where fans would recognize each other at the ball games wearing the shirts. If they saw the logo, they'd be like, oh, they're one of us, they're a Mets fan. And it turned into something where we came around at a time where the team was playing so poorly, but our group was getting larger in size. And we're like, why don't we just sit together at a game one day and see where that takes us? And that was the last game of 2012 when R.A. Dickey threw his 20th win, and it turned into what it is now because it came out kind of out of necessity. The Mets weren't playing well. Obviously, 2015 they made the World Series, but we were around years prior to that. Yeah. So no one could call our group bandwagon fans. We were doing this when the team sucked, and now that they're actually better, we're already on the map, so we're as loyal as they come.
Now, the first time I heard of the 7 Line, it was in the car. I was listening to Boomer McCartney, and they talked about your sign. So that was the first time I ever heard about him. I looked him up. Josh, what about you? When was the first time you met these guys and heard about them?
So I'd heard about him because, I had seen the shirts around the ballpark. I knew about the apparel. I didn't know about the outings. I didn't know about the Army part of this. So I was directing a film in 2015 called Tears of Joy, and we were following the Mets from basically September through the end of the season. And I wanted to tell it in a non-traditional way. I didn't want to do sort of a typical highlight film, and that's when I called up, actually emailed Darren, and you emailed me back in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm quick with the emails.
5 minutes later, we're talking on the phone. I'm like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like, we're from the same place. We speak the same language. We both sort of have been a fan of the teams in the same way. I'm like, all right, let me see what's all about here. So I embedded with them during the 2015 postseason run, which was a pretty good run. And I got to see the insanity of Darren, the madness, as Jim Brewer says, right? And just sort of the loyalty and passion of the group, because that's what this group is really about. If more than anything else, it's about passion. So we talked about it, and we're like, should we do this for real? And I think Darren, I mean, you can tell me what you think, but I think other people had asked to do a docu-follow with you guys before.
We did a lot of like press stuff, and I feel like it was always the same rehashed story of this kid in the basement making I'm old now, but guy making t-shirts in his basement, and now it became something that's a full-time gig. But I feel like since you are a Mets fan and we did Tears of Joy together, and I knew that you would tell the story in a way that nobody else could, that's why I kind of, when we were doing our wrap-up, whatever you call it for Tears of Joy, I was like, listen, dude, we got to start.
You call it an interview?
All right, when we were doing the wrap-up interview, like the sad, disappointing, like, hey, we just lost the World Series. And I was like, listen, we got to start now if we're going to do something with the 7 Line Army as its own thing, because I really feel like we have something here. And like you said, the Tears of Joy stuff was filmed more so of us community. Like you came to the bar with us for that first game against the Dodgers. It was awesome. The bar was at capacity 4 hours before first pitch. The line was down to the next avenue. Like the group is such a story in itself that has, it's about baseball. We love cheering the team, but it's more than that. And I feel like you would capture that, and SI hit the nail on the head, and I'm so pumped on it.
So you're the face of the 7 Line. You are.
Yes.
But it's not about you right now. We're going to talk about everybody else. Lizzie, Drew, the General. We got a lot of cast characters.
Yeah.
Great people. Did you meet them through the 7 Line? Were you friends beforehand?
I've known Lizzie since I'm a teenager. Wow. So when it came to the point where I needed some help in the warehouse, she was actually unemployed at the time. She used to work in Manhattan, and she was tired of that grind. And then working for, we're drinking beers here on a Wednesday during the day. Like we kind of do the same stuff at work. Sorry to curse here. So yeah, it's just a fun time, and I feel like she would bring the same passion than I would to it, and that's why we're still a very homegrown group where if you work for us or have anything to do with the group, you have to be a Mets fan, and that's kind of like why I wanted to also partner with Josh on this, because I know he's a fan, and while this is also his career, that he would do it in a way where he would take it professionally, but also he has a little bit of rooting interest in the Mets, but also he does work for this company. So I know that he was going to hit the nail on the head. And yeah, but like the group, the normal cast of characters, it's not just me. And I hate being not to crap on other groups that have like faces or like leaders or whatever. We call Andrew the General because he's never missed a game up until recently. He missed a spring training game. No, not to bring that up again, Andrew, but he never missed a game. He's been to more of the outings than I have. I had to miss a couple for weddings or whatnot. But the group has its own leaders, if you want to call it, but no one's the leader. We're all in it together, and I don't want to be more special than anyone else. And I feel like it's a completely even level playing field. We're all there for the same reason, which is cheering on the team. But yeah, we have a really core group of members, and we're global. We have thousands of members or fans that have sat with us from all over the place.
Yeah, one of the things that actually attracted me to the group wasn't just that Darren looks like the way he looks, right? He's got the sleeve of the tattoo. I said he looks like the fifth Wahlberg brother right here. But I think there's a perception that most baseball fans kind of look like Steve Bartman.
Yeah.
Right? They show up and they have like a Walkman, and they look, that's what people think baseball fans are. And that's a perception that frankly is not great for the sport. Sure. And that's something that I don't think tells the reality of what the sport is. So when I embedded with these guys, I said, you know what? This is the most diverse group that can reach a far-ranging audience. And if you look at Drew, and if you look at Lizzie, you look at Chris Duell, who is, a divorced father of 2 that lives in Chicago, but he goes to more Mets games in New York than people that live around the corner from the ballpark. There's a lot of different aspects of what the Army is that reaches a crowd across all sort of races and ages and any divide that you have. And the passion that all of them take is the thread that ties them. I kind of call them the Happy Gilmore of baseball, right? Baseball needs a group like the 7 line, and that really is what attracted us to want to do a deep dive into this film.
Now, it's not just the fans. We also get the players are invested in this. We've had David Wright talk about what it means. But what made this past season so special, and hearing those guys talk about what it means to have the 7 line out at the ballpark every day?
I mean, that adds to our fire and our excitement to get out there and cheer for these guys. You know, like we're steps away from the bullpen at Citi Field, so they get involved in the chants with us. We do like a He Struck Him Out. Shout out to Mike the King, actually invented that back at Shea. So we do that at the games. He struck him out, and like the bullpen gets involved in that as well. So anything that we could do to bring more passion and excitement to the ballpark, I think is a positive thing. And I think that's just across baseball in general. Like if you're a diehard Yankee fan or a diehard Phillies fan or whatever, and you're bringing passion to your ballpark, that's exactly what we're trying to do, which is cool. So yeah, I mean, I had a guy yesterday at Starbucks. I was getting some work done, and people asked me, they see a shirt like, oh, you part of that 7 line? I'm so yeah, I'm the owner. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. You should come hang out. And it's like, well, how do you join? I'm like, you don't have to join. There's no initiation. You don't get beat in. We're not a gang. You're like, just buy a ticket, show up, and say what's up. Like, like Josh said, we're all walks of life coming together, all sexualities, all races, all whatever. Just come and hang out and cheer with us and have fun, enjoy your life. That's what the whole thing's about. Why be so uptight?
Fair. And I know the doc's incredible. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Make sure to tune in and check it out. It's fantastic. I know every Met fan and all baseball fans are truly going to love it.
I absolutely love it. Loyal Till the Last Out. You can watch it on MLB Network at 10 p.m. on Sunday. And fun personal fact about me, I met my husband watching a Mets game. Love the Mets. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of SI Now. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. But until then, keep it locked to SI.com for all the latest news. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. See you tomorrow.